Hi everyone, I'm back with another video from the Season 8 PTR. This time I want to talk about rogues, which are absolutely annihilating those higher tier pits. So what you can see here right now is a pit 100 with the Belial power build. This is based on one of the new boss powers that is coming in Season 8. And it is extremely strong. If you're not aware, pit 100 is probably something like close to pit 130 or so on the live server right now, because they have rebalanced the different tiers and the scaling. So this is actually very high-end stuff here, and not many builds will be able to even get close to pit 100, let alone like blast through it at this pace that you're seeing here right now. And the only thing that does damage here are these like rotating I-beams, which is one of the new boss powers. It is like a boss power specific build. I have Twisting Blades, for example, but it's only for supporting purposes in this setup and not actually contributing DPS. Everything here is just damage buffs basically. So you have the Caltrops, of course, you have the Smoke Grenade, it has a damage buff. The Shadow Imbuement gives us non-physical damage, and also the Eldritch Bounty for shadow damage, which these I-beams do. And then the Poison Trap has also been updated to not just buff poison damage, but all non-physical damage. And on top of that, we have the Death Trap here to pull stuff together. So we kind of like, walk in, press the Death Trap a bunch, spam Twisting Blades, and then every 5 seconds you press the potion. And speaking of potions, you see here they're like flying out all the time. This is because of the Belial boss power. This is only activated by pressing the potion. We have a 5 seconds cooldown. And in that case, you have to have the siphoned victuals aspect that is available to rogues in order to produce these potions here. Now, we get way more than we need, but we need some extra amount of potions. There's also Nebulous Brews that you can use, which is more for like speed farming, for example. This is an option if you want to like make some really fast Torment 4 build out of this, for example, to get more potions. But for example, here in like the pit where you're standing still a lot, you can't use that. So Siphon Victuals it is. This is a really strong build, and even without something like Darkshot, for example, I live through a lot of stuff pretty easily. Rogues are just like generally relatively tanky, and it works without that. But if you want, you can make this way more tanky by just introducing Darkshot in your setup, giving up like a slight damage buff, for example, from the Smoke Grenade or something like that. And like this here would be extremely tanky, and you can just absolutely blast through everything. I do have a planner for this setup as well, so I made this the other day here on my stream, and this is what this looks like. Now, of course, this is subject to change. We don't know exactly what this will look like when the Season 8 patch goes live, because there is like a general kind of feedback consensus, including for myself, that these boss powers are too strong and they're like too build defining. Basically every class's best build seems to be based on those boss powers. There are some exceptions, like for example on Barb and Necro and Druid, it's not really such a ridiculous gap. But on the other classes, yeah, it's like clearly better to make a build around those boss powers. And even for those three I mentioned, they have really powerful builds based on those powers. So it's not like you're investing into a skill, you're investing only into the powers. So in this case, the Belial's I-beams, for example. And a lot of people seem very upset with that. But if nothing changes in like a really major way, like we're talking about like a, times 10 or times 20 nerf or something like that to those boss powers, then this will most likely end up being like one of the best builds out there for the rogues. There's other good stuff, like Death Trap is looking very promising, Rain of Arrows is looking very promising, even Twisting Blades goes into like 90 plus pits as well. So there are various builds on the rogue that are good. You don't have to play only that, and especially with a likely nerf, it might be a bit more even between them, but we'll see. And now comes a second version of the boss power rogue, which is based on the Urival power and Rain of Arrows spam. So this is something very interesting. So I saw this from Dioxide, who has been doing some stuff with Rain of Arrows. And it turns out when you combine preparation with the 5 seconds cooldown reset and the Urival power that also resets your ultimate by 5 seconds, and then you get your ultimate down to 10 seconds maximum cooldown, you can just spam it. So you see this here, I'm just pressing Rain of Arrows right now. Every time I do that, I shoot these Urival bombs, and like this you can do a lot of damage. And I actually made a second version of this boss power rogue based on crit and not dot, with the Urival power. So you have this here, this is the same planner, I will link this down in the description as well. And that is also pretty powerful. In fact, it might be even more powerful than the other version with the Belial I-beams. So this is what this looks like here. You see this is a pit 105, so we're getting really into high-end territory. Of course, Belial's I-beams, I was just doing 100 and really fast, so this is relatively close, but it felt like the Urival power was a little bit more impactful. And also it does have a built-in Dark Shroud, so it's tankier than the other version. This is by default. You don't have to give up anything for including the Dark Shroud, for example. But it also is a little bit more annoying because you can't pull enemies together so easily. You don't have the Death Trap that the other setup had, which made it like very nice and smooth just to like, you know, run into a big pack, pull everything into one spot and then blast it down. Here, you kind of have to try to get them into position first and then you can start attacking, at least for like the higher pits. That was a little bit annoying, but you see that the power is there. Like this absolutely annihilates. And even on the boss, as long as you can hit those blood boils that come from the Lilith power that you see here when the elites spawn, this helps you to take down bosses really fast, and you can even push like probably 110 plus with this setup. It is otherwise based on roughly the same stuff. So we also have the Caltrop, Smoke Grenade, we have the Shadow Imbuement for non-physical damage. I have like one different Paragon board. I have Deadly Ambush instead of Eldritch Bounty, kind of similar effect anyway. And then we spam the Rain of Arrows as much as possible. And every Rain of Arrows cast produces these explosions here. So you try to like stay in the middle of the pack or right on top of the boss, for example, because those explosions can actually overlap. So in the middle, they have like a little, you know, zone where all of them do damage at the same time. And like this, you can just take down elites and bosses relatively quickly. And this is obviously a little bit more flashy because you're spamming these bombs here like 2 times per second or 3 times per second. So it's like constantly like popping these red explosions here. But it is a very strong build as well. And again, pending potential nerfs to those boss powers, I think this will remain a really impactful build, unless they specifically break some interaction here or something like that. Yeah, 105 in this time, like going to like 110 is definitely like the highest end of builds outside of like Sorks that I have seen with like the Andariel and Burning powers. They can go a little bit beyond that, but most of the top end builds of all the classes I have seen are somewhere in a range of like 105 to 110. Again, as I mentioned, you can find these two setups here in the planner, so we'll see what happens in the final patch notes. For now, I'm not like, you know, putting out a full build guide for everything here. We're gonna wait for like a month now or whenever the patch notes come. And then we're going to see if we're going to make like, you know, a dedicated maximal guide and so on. But I think it's relatively likely that either one or both of these setups will survive and actually be really powerful. So if you want to make a Season 8 boss power rogue, well, there is a lot of potential here. And you can already check out what this looks like. So that's what I got here for now for the rogues. Let me know what you think about it. Personally, I do have to say, I am not a big fan of these builds being like by far the best. I think it's okay if they get nerfed and they're going to be like some kind of like a viable high-end option for a season. But yeah, for now, they definitely seem clearly ahead of normal rogue builds. So this is what we got here. And we'll see how much or if they will be adjusted later on. Other than that, I'm going to keep you guys posted with more Season 8 PTR videos, so stay tuned. I have a bunch more stuff to share. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think, and see you guys next time.